Hi, Facebook. It's Mariah Gullo from Billboard, and I'm here with the director of One More Time with Feeling, Andrew Dominik. Hello,
Hi.
Andrew.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm okay.
This film is amazing. It's coming out December 1st. It's a release after the first showing, which was in September. And it's about Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds. And can you tell me a little bit about the film?
Um, I guess the film's really dealing with, the subject of the film is what the film shows is Nick making a record in the shadow of his son Arthur's death, and it shows him and his family and the band basically trying to cope with that, or trying to keep one foot in front of the other as they move forward through the process of finishing a record.
Right. And was this documentary already in motion when his son's accident happened?
No. And in fact, the film was really a response to a practical problem where, Nick was halfway through making this record when Arthur died. And I think Nick tried to deal with that the way he always deals with a crisis or a problem in his life. He essentially works. He sort of mines the stuff of his life and turns it into songs. And I think he tried to do the same thing with this record after Arthur died, and just found that he couldn't. But still, he has to finish a record, and he had to promote the record. And I think he found the idea of having to go out and do press a daunting thing, because there's no way to talk about the record without talking about the context of the record, and the context of the record is Arthur, and it wasn't something that he felt that he could do with a whole lot of strangers. But at the same time, he did seem to feel, or it became clear that he felt that he needed to let people who cared know the state of the union. And his idea about doing this, was to do a film.
Right.
It's just like a safe space, I guess. Or a safer space, anyway.
So in a way, even though the film itself has a feeling of kind of an intrusion on a tragic personal moment, it's actually kind of protecting him from the world, or trying to put a creative barrier around his grief.
I think so. Yeah, I think so. I'm not really sure. This is all very fresh. Okay, so we start shooting the film within 6 months of Arthur's death, and I wasn't even necessarily convinced that Nick was making good decisions at the time. He's just basically reacting in a hand-to-mouth way. The thing about a tragedy like this is what happens, what people are confronted with is their helplessness. And that helplessness creates a wish to action. It's any kind of action, People worry about other people, and it's all just to give them the illusion that there's something to do, And I think that's why he wanted to go back and finish the record. I think the film was born out of the same kind of thing, but I wasn't necessarily sure that it was a good idea, that even making the film. But he asked me to do it, and I kind of wanted to help, and that's where it came from.
All right. There's a moment in the film where Nick Cave says that trauma is extremely damaging to the creative process.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about what he was saying? It sounds like he almost in the process of filming the movie, he starts to make a lot of realizations about what is happening. Is he trying to dispel that myth that you have to suffer for your art, or?
I think for Nick he's always found it. Art is maybe a way of making things safe. Do you know what I mean? Some awful thing happens to you. You tell yourself a story about it, or some chaotic event occurs. You write a song, you create a story, you kind of contain that event, and you can compartmentalize it. You can put it there, and you ascribe a certain meaning to it, and in a way, maybe you don't have to think about it again, or you don't have to think about it in quite the same way. It gives you some feeling of control over it. Mm-hmm. And I think Nick felt that he would be able to do that in this situation, and found that he couldn't. So for the first time in his life, he goes into a studio to try and get a handle around these feelings, and he finds that it's impossible to do it. And in fact, all of the things that he felt he could usually rely on, he actually felt like he said he actually felt like he was a different person, that person, he didn't recognize himself anymore. But for Susie, it seems to have had the opposite effect. I mean, Susie's kind of creativity seems to have blossomed, mainly because it's the only thing working for her, is the only distraction that works, So, I mean, I guess they all react to it in different ways.
Right. We're going to take a question from Facebook.
Yeah, James wants to know, what level of input or control did Nick have in what you guys were able to discuss and ultimately show in the movie?
We had a deal. And the deal was that I could ask Nick any question, and I could shoot anything, and he could cut anything that he wanted out of the film. In the end, he didn't, but that was the deal. And I think that was the thing that probably made him feel safe, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Can you tell us a little bit about Nick Cave's voiceovers? Because his voiceovers are sometimes commenting on the process of the filmmaking.
Yeah.
What were your choices for when you brought in those voiceovers? What were you thinking?
Well, the voiceovers, again, was kind of like a practical thing. Like I knew, if you're making a movie in 3D, I don't feel like you can... you can't cut a lot. The shots have to be long. But watching long shots is kind of dull unless there's something else going on. And I came up with the idea of voiceover. That was a practical thing. But then I realized, okay, what you've really got is you've got this person who is going through an external life that's full of motion, and it's full of problems, and it's something that he has to negotiate. But inside him, something very different is happening. And the voiceover was a way to kind of give you some insight into his inner life. The way it was done was that I would give Nick topics, or I'd just get him to go through his songbook at random. He recorded all the voiceover on his iPhone, and he would just send it to me, and I'd wake up in the morning, and it'd be in the Dropbox. So I had like 3 hours of voiceover, and I would just play around with various, sometimes the voiceover is constructed out of a whole lot of different pieces. And Nick has a very kind of almost stand-up comedy style of like, he's got like 6 balls in the air, but in the end he ties it all up in a neat little bow at the end, and I didn't want that. I kind of wanted it to be a lot more, a lot rawer, and a lot less resolved. So I would steal pieces of voiceover from all over the place, and we just muddle around and basically find things that seem to express, what we were trying to express, to like that,
Mm-hmm. And when you do go and see this movie in December, you do get the option of seeing it in 3D, and I think that's really important, because in the movie you kind of go through the frustration of working with this new technology. Why did you choose to keep exposing the 3D technology in the movie?
I wasn't trying to make some meta film about the process of making a film. It's just that the subject was so tender, and it required such a softly catchy monkey approach to sort of, the film circles this tragedy. Mm-hmm. And at the beginning, it wasn't at all obvious that we were going to be able to deal with it directly. And in fact, the only way people would be real was if the camera broke down. It was only when they felt like they weren't being filmed that, people would reveal themselves. So those moments have to be in the film, you know what I mean? Because they're the moments that are real. It just happened that way. But I do feel like the difficulty reveals character, you know, like you put people in a difficult situation and you see who they are. So it was basically, I mean, there's no such thing as a fly on the wall. If there's a film crew in the room, I mean, there's a camera over there, you know what I mean? We can pretend that it's not there. And maybe at certain moments you forget that it isn't there, but it's there. And in a film like this, which is really the only thing it's trying to be is honest, it just seemed dishonest not to acknowledge that, you know.
Would you work in 3D again?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a pain in the ass, but it's fun. It's fun to watch.
Yeah. We have another question from Facebook.
We do. Bree asks, do you have any tips on how to be a great director?
Do I have any tips on how to be a great director?
Yes. How do you become a great director? Or do you have any tips?
I don't know. I mean, I think I think that a film kind of knows what it wants to be, and I think you've got to kind of get out of your own way a little bit, and you have to be able to see what's going on around you. You know. I guess my approach to filmmaking is more like it's like an investigation rather than a creation. There's something that I'm interested in, and I want to find out what that thing is. And you know, a film should be a journey of some kind. Do you know what I mean? It should be a discovery of some kind. It shouldn't be something that's like known before you start. Exactly, you know. But I think you need courage. I think you need a lot of courage.
Do you prefer working in narrative or documentary?
Well, it was really, really fun to make this film because it was the first time I ever went to work and I had no idea what I was going to do that day. You know, like it was impossible to plan anything. And, you know, that's kind of scary, but at the same time it's so liberating. You know, you have to follow your instincts. You've got no choice, you know. I mean, the whole movie's improvised. We don't know what we're doing. I mean, I think that's good. You should do things that you don't know, you know, like you don't know how to do them. Those are the things you should do. You should do the things that you're frightened of, because those are always the things that that are going to test you in some way, and you know, they're more likely to be interesting.
Was there any moment in the process when you wanted to stop filming because emotions got too high?
No, but there were moments. You know, the big fear with the movie is that there's going to be something off about it. That it's like grief porn. That it's exploitative. That basically we're exploiting the tragic death of Arthur in order to sell records. You know, and that somehow the film is going to belittle or trivialize or exploit that tragedy. That was always the fear. And there were times where there were definitely times where I felt like I might push things, and they're on that side of the line, you know, that sort of more Barbara Walters-ish side of the line, and you really feel it, like you really feel like you're doing something that's you know, just like lacking in dignity, and you know, it's like yeah, but you know, like when you're with somebody that's gone through something like this. I mean, I can remember asking Susie a question about Arthur, and you just see her start to shake, you know, and you can just feel this black hole open up in the room, you know, and it's not a feeling of sorrow, it's not a feeling of anger, it's this really, really intense feeling of emptiness. It's horrible. And what you feel is a kind of a real you know, worry and empathy for that person. You don't really want to put them through that, you know. So but I'm protected, you know, because I'm there to make a film. I'm protected by the camera. It's in a way, you know.
Yeah.
And they're not, but I am, you know. And I do feel a responsibility to not use moments where I feel like a person is not. I don't know if it's not in control. I don't know how to describe it, but that doesn't have agency in that moment. You know, they need to have some agency, and I feel like it's okay for them to talk about. My criteria was if they're discussing the process of grieving, if they're giving you some insight into what it's like to live with what's happened, then I can use that. You know, that's okay. That's valid. I tended to shy away from kind of expressions of emotion that were without some other meaning, you know.
Okay. We have another question from Facebook.
We do. Casey asks, what films, if any, influenced your style in creating this film?
I think I went back and I looked at a lot of music documentaries. I think the big one was probably Don't Look Back, because it's in London, it's black and white, and it's really a portrait of a poet, you know, which I think, you know, Nick and Bob Dylan have in common is they're really poets in a way. You know.
Let's talk a little bit about Nick Cave, the performer.
Yeah.
Because a lot of this movie is about the actual performances, the recording sessions.
Yeah.
You know, can you tell us a little bit about what he's like as a performer, how his band works together?
What Nick's doing now, I mean, Nick believes in change. He believes the way to stay relevant or interesting or interested is to always be trying something new. He wants to be doing things that he doesn't know what he's doing. What he's doing at the moment is really fascinating. He's obsessed with that moment where a song is still in an unconscious form, where nobody really knows what the song is yet or what it wants to be, and they want to capture that. And they even go to the extremes of the first time Nick hears music that Warren has written is when he is singing the lyrics over the top. I mean, he'll just go to the microphone, but Warren will play him a loop, and Nick will start singing. He'll just randomly, and then they make a song, you know, and it's incredible. And a lot of this record is just the first time that he sung those lyrics over the basis of that, you know, the bed of that music. And he's fascinated by that because he feels like what's going on there is that he's in touch with a kind of unconscious, there's something unconscious going on, like his you know, the left side of his brain's not involved, and perhaps he's revealing something that's truer or deeper or more, you know, like tuning in to some larger thing, you know. So as a performer, he's really obsessed with, he wants to be spontaneous. He does not want to repeat things. His early takes are always the best, and he's quite difficult because he's superstitious about even saying that I'm going to go and do a take now, you know, like at the microphone. He doesn't even want to let you know that he's doing it because he's not trying to record something. He just wants to do something that happens to be recorded. And so even to talk about it, they're like superstitious. They won't even tell me, I'm going to go and try something now. I've just got to like, you know, I'm just like with the camera, you know, hoping that I'm in the right spot at the right time. But he's very good. He's a really good performer. I remember just saying to him at a certain point, well, there's, you know, some of these performances, I just want to like hold it on your face, and I'm nervous about doing that because the performances have to be really good. And he's just like, yeah, okay. Like he's got no kind of, you know, he's completely confident in his ability to deliver, you know. But I guess, you know, in this situation, it's almost impossible for him not to deliver because the songs themselves are so tied up in that event, you know, and in the aftermath of that event. And some of these songs were written beforehand, and they're prophetic in nature. And they're so entangled, you know, with what happened to Arthur that they just can't help but be compelling. You know, he just can't help but be compelling. And it's not. It's interesting too because they're not belters. They're not. I mean, Nick can get into his full like Pentecostal preacher mode. You know what I mean? Where he's like, you know, almost like wrestling with snakes and talking in tongues. But he's not doing that here. The songs are quite. They're internal and they're kind of introspective, but he's absolutely riveting to watch. You know.
Yeah.
So it's pretty easy. You just point the camera and yeah.
Just point the camera and let him be
Yeah.
him. We have another question from Facebook.
We do. Our last Facebook question is from Jesse, who wants to know what made you want to get into filmmaking.
Well, I like films, you know, basically, and you know, like I was one of those kids that used to make like little Super 8 Planet of the Apes, make Planet of the Apes in the backyard. Yeah, and that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to get into it. You know, if I could go back in time and talk to my younger self, I'd maybe try and talk some sense into him. But yeah, it's really fun. I mean, filmmaking is great. You know.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Andrew.
No worries.
Your film is beautiful and heartbreaking, and
you.
it's in 3D, and it's out in theaters the first week of December 1st. So check it out one more time with feeling. Thank you.